Now we'll follow motility through the small and large intestine. The main functions of the small intestine are digestion and absorption of nutrients. So the motility patterns in the small intestine mix the chyme with digestive enzymes and pancreatic secretions, expose the nutrients to the intestinal mucosa for absorption, and propel unabsorbed materials along the small intestine into the large intestine. After eating, motility patterns of the small intestine mainly consist of peristalsis and segmentation. Peristalsis is that coordinated, propagating contraction pushing forward towards the large intestine, while segmentation or stationary contractions occur at random regions and don't propagate. So in the small intestine, the interstitial cells of Cajal can produce more frequent slow waves than in the stomach. In the duodenum, there are about 12 slow waves per minute, and that number slowly decreases distally with about 9 slow waves per minute in the ileum. These slow waves determine the rate that action potentials, and therefore contractions, can occur in each part of the small intestine. Peristalsis is a traveling wave of contraction in the small intestine that propels chyme forward along the small intestine towards the large intestine. For this to occur, the circular and longitudinal smooth muscles surrounding the GI tract have to contract and relax in a complex and coordinated way. Remember that contraction of the circular muscle decreases the diameter of the tube, while contraction of the longitudinal muscle decreases the length of the tube. A sensory stimulus initiates the peristaltic reflex, and behind the bolus, the release of excitatory neurotransmitters contract the circular smooth muscle, and at the same time, these excitatory pathways are inhibited in the longitudinal smooth muscle. So this segment narrows and lengthens. In front of the bolus, inhibitory pathways are activated in the circular smooth muscle, relaxing it, and excitatory neuronal input contracts the longitudinal smooth muscle. This widens and shortens the segment of the small intestine, preparing it to receive the bolus. Normally, peristaltic contractions travel only a few centimeters before dying out because the bolus moves, and so that stimulus is gone. Segmentation is a local cycle of relaxation and contraction that by itself is non-propagating and non-propulsive. In segmentation, a section of circular muscle in the small intestine contracts, splitting the chyme that's there. That section then relaxes, which allows the chyme that was separated to come back together. This back and forth movement allows mixing without forward movement. The maximal rate of contraction is set by the rate of the slow waves produced by those local interstitial cells of Cajal, the pacemaker cells. The migrating motor complex, or migrating myoelectric complex, is a pattern of electrical and contractile activity that spreads through the gut during the interdigestive period between a meal. This is sometimes called the interdigestive housekeeper because it continually sweeps through the small intestine, keeping it clear of secretions and of chyme between meals. The cycle originates in the stomach, migrates through the small intestine, with a new migrating motor complex being initiated about every 90 minutes. The migrating motor period can be divided into 3 phases and begins with a relatively long period, about 45 to 60 minutes, of inactivity, followed by a phase of increasing contractile activity where slow waves have increasingly more action potentials, followed by a short period, about 10 minutes, where almost every slow wave has action potentials and the muscle is contracting intensely. The hormone motilin cycles in the same manner as the migrating motor complex, and it's thought to have a role in initiating or regulating the migrating motor complex. Upon ingestion of a meal, the migrating motor complex is interrupted by continuous segmentation occurring in the small intestine. The colon has similar types of mixing and propulsive movements as the small intestine. These segmentation contractions happen in the cecum and in the proximal colon, and these are local contractions that mix luminal contents just like in the small intestine. This type of non-propulsive movement delays movement of the luminal contents so they can be held in the cecum, which is a storage site somewhat similar to the stomach, and aids in the removal of water and electrolyte. Mass movements are the major propulsive contractions that are usually initiated in the transverse colon and push contents long distances into the sigmoid colon and rectum. These generally occur 1 to 3 times per day and push the fecal contents into the rectum where they're stored until defecation occurs. The gastrocolic reflex is a long arc reflex that occurs when distension in the stomach causes increased motility in the colon and increased frequency of mass movements to push the luminal contents through the colon and prepare it to receive more material.